Ralph Nader is the man. I can't stress enough how impressed I was and how glad I am that he called out my generation.
The reason I did it is because it's accurate. And another reason I did it is it makes people like you angry. And you start thinking about the difference between the word and the deed. I mean, students today, the way you get a rise out of it is not by describing grim reality, not by describing slaughter overseas and poverty here and 20,000 people dying every year because they can't afford health insurance. That's the Institute of Medicine figure. No one dies in Canada or Belgium or Japan because they can't afford health insurance. They're insured from the day they're born. And 100,000 people who die because of medical negligence in hospitals. And 58,000 people who die from work-related diseases and trauma. No, you can't get in your rise out. Here's how you get a rise from your generation. Ethnic slur, gender slur, racial slur. That'll drive you up the wall. And you'll have meetings and demonstrations and protests and fire the professor and so on. I'm trying to bring you down the abstraction level. You're entitled to be much, much more angry about what these words represent on the ground, rather than just what these words. You focus on words. You think the exploiters give a whit about how angry you are about these, as long as you let them off on what they're doing to the people?
And said, how do you get a rise out of this generation? It's not how much we focus on words instead of the deeds. I've felt that way since I was a teenager. And I blame a lot of that on the public school system. All my English classes and all my history classes were nothing about propaganda that were overly focused on race and ethnicity, sometimes religion, mostly race. It's pretty much every book we read, that was a theme. It was either power corrupts and don't be racist. Pretty much no shit ideas. My generation is these bunch of over-socialized liberals who are so eager to prove that they're not a racist or a sexist or homophobic, and yet they just ignore, and they'd get more upset about those things than actual violent crimes. They would get more upset about somebody saying nigger or kike or bimbo or whatever than they would about thousands of people getting killed. Thousands of black people getting killed, thousands of Arabs getting killed. It doesn't matter. You know, being a racist is worse than being a rapist in some people's eyes. And racism's wrong and it's a problem, but there are some people who are just completely obsessed with it. Everything is racism, sexism, or religious bigotry. Everything. Anything that's wrong is like, look at slavery and da-da-da. We have, right now, open sex slavery, human trafficking, American companies, caught straight up, DynCorp, Halliburton, KBR, selling people. We have very open sweatshops, offshore slavery, thousands and thousands of Southeast Asians in there making their Nike shoes or whatever, corporate slavery. That or people working for less than $1 a day. We still have slavery. It's just not divided by color as definite as it was in the past in America, in the Pacific region. There's always been slavery, and there's still slavery. Just not always racial slavery. But see, when it's not racial, it no longer matters all of a sudden. I mean, people really, these same people, and they know about this, they know there's sweatshops, they know there's sex slavery, but they won't really get upset about it. They're not going to say anything about it. But man, you choose the wrong words, and you're out. There was a Washington politician that said the word niggardly, which is the word that means lazy or sloppy, and it was a little bit too close to the word nigger, and he actually lost his office. He was a black guy too, or it doesn't matter. I mean, that is completely ignorant. People say it sounded like he might have said the N-word. Well, that's pretty bad, but we've got politicians that are having sex with little kids and supporting wars that have killed over 1 million people. I mean, that to me is a far, far greater crime than someone's stupidity of believing in racial supremacy. And it's weird because the same people are so hell-bent on showing they're not a racist toward minority groups in the U.S. don't seem to give a damn when the Israelis have an open racial apartheid and bulldoze down houses of Palestinians and build settlements. I mean, you want to talk about racism. There's your racism. But the racism is like the bottom of that crime. The bigger crime is the genocide and the murder and the theft and the violent things they're doing. Someone believing something stupid is something stupid they believe. When they take that belief and act on it, where they're going to enslave people, as they have Palestinians working on $2 a week, or murder people, destroy their property, steal their land, build walls around it and defend it, that's what you got to get mad about, what's being done, the deeds that are being done because of these racial attitudes and sexist attitudes, and when someone is beaten down, when someone's hung, that's what you got to get mad about, not just the words. Someone called somebody Uncle Tom. So what? And Obama isn't Uncle Tom. He's a corporate shell. He's a total sellout. So is McCain. So is Hillary. You know, they're pre-approved media shills. All you guys are idiots for voting for them in the primaries. You really have no excuse. Lesser two evils, my ass. Evil is evil. And here's something else I never understood. And this happened a lot when I was in high school and also when I was in college. I've got a lot of friends who are not white. And because this is how it usually happens to white to someone else. And I never thought about this, but when I was in college, because this wasn't like this where I grew up, but when I got into college, I'd bring someone home to where I live, and I'd introduce them to a friend of mine who was black or Indian or whatever, and for some reason, one of the first or second conversations I ever had with my friend would somehow race would be brought up by the white person that we're trying to hang out with. And they never talked with me about it. They just meet them and doing whatever. Usually it's surfing or martial arts or politics or whatever, but not racial politics. And then suddenly, when they meet my friend, and we could just be like at the pool or going to the beach or something, fucking racial topic would come up. And it's not like this person was racist that I'm using for example, because they actually weren't. They're like hyperly anti-racist, but they're obsessed with the whole concept of race, and it's like they had to prove they weren't a racist. They usually would bring up the topic of race and say how bad racism was, or someone they knew who was racist and he got fucked up, but what I don't get is like why it even came up at all. It's one thing if you're just going to talk about it or something, but in the first or second conversation with meeting one of my friends, like all in a row, it could be a completely new person I bring down, and they just start talking about slaves or whatever, and I just never understood it. So I'm kind of curious to it's whites or non-whites who are watching this video, if you've ever had that experience, like you meet someone and right away they start talking about race, even if they're trying to say how they're not a racist or whatever. Why do they even do that? Why are you even thinking about it? It's crazy. Has that happened to you before? I think that happens to black people a lot. Just because I've had this conversation with people, I just want to ask them about it today. Before I made this video, I started asking, has anyone ever done that? Has anyone ever done that? They go, yes. Happens all the time. It's like when you're Native American and the other person finds it out, first thing out of their mouth is, hey, well, I'm part Cherokee, and then they go on the spiel, and I'm not going to get into it, but I'm just wondering about Latinos, blacks, Indians, whatever. Does this shit happen to you? Do you meet someone new, usually maybe a white person or just somebody who's not your race, whatever, and they just start talking about race out of the blue? I mean, does that happen? Because I think that happens to a lot of people. And people are just obsessed with the concept of race. And it's really, you know, a normal functioning person just doesn't care. You know, they're not racist and they're not racist. They don't have to, like, bring that up to every minority they meet, like, right away. It really makes you start to wonder and be like, what is wrong with this person? Something else is wrong with them. They're not even a racist person, but they're obsessed with it. Something else is wrong with them. If they want to talk about injustice, talk about things in our country.